All right, good evening and welcome to St. Michael Academy. My name is Dr. Rich Brake and I'm the principal here. And I want to thank you all so much for being here tonight on our first lecture in a series that we're entitling, What is Classical Catholic Education? This is something that we're putting on in conjunction with our big enrollment push during the spring. Our goal is to double enrollment by this time next year. And so what we figured was there's a lot of people who know what a Catholic education is, right? That seems pretty straightforward, but not so much the classical. So we thought that we would try to educate the public about what those principles, what those elements are of a classical education. One way of thinking about what a classical education is that we teach the true and the good and the beautiful. And we do that by taking our kids on a little intellectual trip. And we take them through kind of the big cities of Western civilization. Athens, Rome, Jerusalem, and because we're speaking in this language, we spend a lot of time in London, but of course we also spend some time in other great European cities. And in that trip, we introduced our kids to the best that has been written, thought, and said in Western civilization. And what we hope for is when they emerge, they know what the truth is, and then they know how to defend it in the public square. And so we are so excited tonight to launch our first lecture series. We have been blessed by having somebody who not only knows about what classical education is, but he's also probably the foremost expert in this country on one of the great Christian apologists of our time, G.K. Chesterton. And his name is Dale Ahlquist. Let me tell you a little bit about Dale. I mentioned that he is, again, the foremost authority on Chesterton. He is the president of the Chesterton Institute. He's the publisher of Gilbert Magazine, and he has been on a number of popular EWTN shows, one of them being The Apostle of Common Sense. Dale is also an accomplished author and has written 5 books on Chesterton, including Common Sense 101, Lessons from G.K. Chesterton, and The Complete Thinker. Dale has spoken all over the world, actually, on this topic. He's been at such places as Yale, Columbia, Cornell, Notre Dame, Oxford, the Vatican, and actually the House of Lords in London. The reason why primarily he's here is because in addition to all his work on Chesterton, he spearheaded the founding of perhaps the best classical Catholic school in the country that's located in Minneapolis, Minnesota. It's called the Chesterton Academy. They have over 160 kids in their grades 9 through 12, and they have a curriculum that's second to none, and they are actually helping other schools adopt this type of curriculum. So who better to come to our town of Petoskey to discuss what is a classical Catholic education. So without further ado, let me introduce to you Mr. Dale Ahlquist.
We're going to give you a chance to ask some questions at the end. I will look forward to doing some Q&A. In fact, does anybody have a question right now? Let's just get started. Is there? Okay, good. All right. But I will answer a few questions right away. First of all, people always ask me, Dale, how did you get so interested in G.K. Chesterton? And the answer is, I started reading Chesterton like anybody else on my honeymoon. And like any good Baptist, I went to Rome on my honeymoon, as you do. And I happened to be there. I brought my wife with me. She was there. And we were there on the day that Pope John Paul II was shot. Yeah. In fact, I was a suspect because I was a Baptist, you know. But I had an alibi, though. I was reading G.K. Chesterton. Because what else are you going to do on your honeymoon in Rome if not read? And so I started reading The Everlasting Man, which was the book that so influenced C.S. Lewis. C.S. Lewis was an atheist till he read Chesterton. He said a young man who's serious about his atheism cannot be too careful about what he reads. And Chesterton not only did a complete number on me, he brought me to the Catholic Church and sort of took over my life. My wife says, since the three of us have been married, she says that the three of us have gotten along very well. She says it did lead to other things too, which is really the reason why I'm here tonight. But in 1910, Chesterton wrote a book called "What's Wrong with the World," and in this book he identifies 4 things that are wrong with the world: big government, big business, feminism, and public education. 1910. And he says, why are these 4 things, why are these the 4 things that are wrong with the world? Because all of them conspire to undermine the rights and the interests of the family. They are all against the family. Big business pulls both father and mother out of the home and makes the job more important than the family, more important than the home. Big government swoops in to replace the parents who have been taken out of the home and fills that gap because it's the only thing powerful enough to replace the functions of the family, and it becomes the surrogate parent, and no more so than by taking over education. Feminism, says Chesterton, is just as public education is the tool of big government, feminism is the tool of big business. Because, as Chesterton says, 10,000 women marched through the streets saying, "We will not be dictated to." And they went off and became stenographers. Feminism is all about equality of men and women. Well, the only way that men and women can be equal is if women don't have babies. Because women have always been able to do all the things that men do. But they do the one thing that men can't do, which is have babies. Feminism has always been an attack on motherhood. And that's why Chesterton identifies it as one of the things that's wrong with the world. It's an attack on the most powerful force on earth, which is motherhood. And there's nothing that can replace the power and influence of a mother. And when a mother gives up that power, that nurturing strength of hers, and uses some artificial means to raise her child, such as a daycare center, Chesterton says it's the equivalent of having an umbrella over your head in a rainstorm and using a watering can to water your plants during a rainstorm with an umbrella over your head. You're using an unnatural means to replace a natural means. And so these 4 things, big government, big business, feminism, and public education, are what's wrong with the world. Public education. It seems like such a noble and good idea. And of course, it was created with the best of intentions to provide education cheaply or free. No one pays for public education, right? To as many people as possible. What could be better than that? Well, it used to be, when it was started, when public schools were started in small communities, the school board was comprised of parents who were neighbors, who all had the same interest in mind, which was that these teachers that we hire are going to be in loco parentis. They're going to serve in our place to educate our children, and we're the ones who are hiring them, and they are accountable to us. It seems like it should work, right? What has happened, of course, is that school boards do not represent parents anymore. In fact, parents are now accountable to the school boards. And the philosophies of public education have driven a wedge between parent and child, and they no longer represent the interests of the parent. In fact, what Chesterton says 100 years ago. In a public school today, children are subjected to educational philosophies that are younger than they are. We don't teach anything that's traditional because old is bad and new is good, and newer is better. If new is good, newer must be better. And that philosophy, which goes by the very misused term of progressive, has been just a completely degenerative philosophy.